Hello. It never ceases to amaze me how plants survive the winter, but somehow they do. But the cold weather can play havoc with indoor plants, and if yours are anything like mine, in fact, look at this one. Isn't it pathetic? Goodness knows what's wrong with it, but hopefully Jock Davison, our houseplant expert, will be able to give me the answer.
Well, I think maybe the name first, Kate. This is a succulent, and the proper name is Calanchoe Frederick-Stallii.
Really?
No.
I
That's
didn't.
something to start with. Well, normally I think that plants are killed with kindness, but I think that this one has suffered just a bit too much.
I've had it in a very hot room.
Well, it really, if it's in a hot room, it would need to be watered about once a fortnight over the winter. But in a cool room, you probably get away with once a month, and it really wants to be in a light windowsill. But I don't think you should despair, because if you remove all these dead bits from around the bottom of it, and maybe pinch the tops out and cut it back to about here once the flowers are finished, I think you'll find it'll brush out and look quite reasonably attractive.
You've brought in a plant that's suffered from the winter,
Well, lots of them suffer, yes. I brought a hydrangea. This is one of the many flowering plants that people will be buying, and the problem with it is that it's been in a place where it's not been getting sufficient light. So the flowers have shattered and are almost dead, and it's also been in a place where there's been too much hot air around, and you can see the effects on the actual leaves where they're scorching around the outsides. A very good tip, really, with all flowering plants, that they should be grown in good light and not too hot.
Compare with mine, actually. It looks quite healthy, to tell you the truth.
Well, it's a sad plant, really. You can see that the whole thing is shattered and dying and falling to bits, in fact. So that's
somebody
one problem.
there, obviously, in the that you've got in your hand, has put that too near a radiator.
Yes, this is another problem. If you get them touching radiators, they tend to get scorched on the end of the leaf, and it gradually dies back until the whole leaf is finished.
Do you know, I opened a book the other day, Jock, and it said, kindness kills. That's what kills most plants. Do you think that's true?
Well, there's an old thing called TLC that we often talk about, and this is tender loving care. And I think that too much of it, we're watering and talking and feeding and heating and that sort of thing, can be disastrous for plants.
Yeah. Well, I get on in a shocking muddle, but I'm very comforted because in the studio, 3 ladies have come along with their plants and their queries after writing to us, Jock. And I'd like you to meet Lillian first, because you had a query about poinsettias, Lillian, didn't you?
Yes, I would like to know where I went wrong for future reference, so when I have another one.
Well,
look.
This is a very sad poinsettia, Lillian, and it's a very good example of too much water killing the thing off. And you can see the water, actually, how it's drained through into the bag at the bottom, and the whole thing is completely saturated.
It's not kept in the bag like that.
No, but you can feel it. You know, you could absolutely squeeze the water out of it.
I see.
And when you get too much water in a pot, you've got no air in the pot, and the roots begin to rot and die. And the consequence of roots rotting and dying is that you get this sort of thing happening.
Is once a week too often?
Well, it's impossible to say how often. People say you should water moderately or frequently or regularly or once in a while, but it doesn't mean a damn thing, really. The thing is that you should water it, allow it to dry a little, in my view, and then water it again. But it's difficult to say how often, because the temperature in the room and that sort of thing would govern it to quite a large degree.
Yes, but Lillian's done right there, because she has cut it back. And that's what they tell you to do in the books. Now, why
you see,
that
this plant actually has died. And someone came up to me once at Chelsea Flower Show and said, "What can you do for a dead plant?" I said, "Right, you can put it in the dustbin if you have a mind to, but there's not much you can do for it."
Right,
This is another one, Lillian. This is also a poinsettia. And there must be a few million of them in the country that are looking like this.
How old is that one?
And that, well, they're all 1 year old when you buy them. We put them in, put the cuttings in sort of May time, and they're mature plants by Christmas. Now, what you should do with a plant like this, once the leaves fall, is that you should cut it back to something like that, just an inch or two from the, so you have
That
something
seems a
looking like
pity,
that.
doesn't it, to cut all
And
the flowers?
well, it seems a pity when they're in flower, but yeah, as I said, you let the flowers die,
Oh, I see.
and then you cut them back, you keep them dry, keep them in a warm place, and then after about 6-8 weeks, you'll find that they will shoot out new growth from the stem, and off you go again.
Jock, that's all very well. I did exactly that, followed the right instructions, and nothing happened. In fact, mine ended up looking the same as Lillian's. What about...
But Kay, you did say that Mummy told you to put it in a dark cupboard, didn't you?
That's right.
And if I was a poinsettia, I wouldn't like to sit in a dark cupboard for too long. No, I think you've got to keep them in good light, keep them warm, and no water, and almost assuredly they will grow again. They're not really difficult.
Now, poinsettias do like darkness, though, in spite of
No,
what you
this
say,
is
don't
another misnomer, really. But the only time, what they like is after they have grown, after that's produced new growth, from about the middle of October through to Christmas, it only wants natural daylight. This is it doesn't really want darkness. It wants natural daylight in order that they will produce these flowers by Christmas time.
Right.
But
Can you speed on the flowering? Because a lot of people seem to be able to grow the leaves again, but then not the flower.
Now, and the reason why they can't get flowers is that they grow them in a room where they've got the natural light, and then they have artificial light in the evening. And the plant can't distinguish one from the other. And instead of producing its bracts as it should do, or initiate its bracts in the middle of October, it continues to grow because it thinks it's the middle of June.
Oh, I see. While we're on the subject of flowers, Jock, could I just bring in a question that came from a Mrs. Jones of Kidderminster? She wrote to us about flowering cactuses, and she got an Easter cactus. She got it on Mothering Sunday, and she wants to know what she should do when it stops flowering.
Well, when it stops flowering, I think the thing to do is keep it indoors, keep it not too wet, moist but not too wet, in a light windowsill, and then about the end of May to put it out of doors in a reasonably sunny location, keep it moist while it's out there, and bring it in before there's a frost. And keep it in the light window again, and hopefully there will be flowers.
She had another query on Christmas cacti, and I know you've got one, Joan,
Yes, I
haven't
have
you?
one at home.
Yeah. She was advised to put it outside for the summer, and then bring it in again, obviously before the frost came. But the result was she got no flowers, and was it because she put it outside?
Now, I wouldn't think it was because she put it outside. It may be because, like a lot of flowering plants, it may be because it was kept too wet. So if you keep them too wet, they have this tendency to produce lots of growth at the expense of flowers. So flowering plants, prior to their natural flowering time, want to be kept a bit on the dry side.
Now that the summer's on us, as a general point, is it a good idea to put some of your indoor plants outside for a breather?
Oh, I think yes, but not the delicate ones. Most of the plants will have tags attached telling you whether they're easy or delicate or whatever. And if it's a difficult or delicate plant, then it should stay indoors. But if it's a thing like an ivy, roycissus, chlorophytum, that sort of thing, then you can put them outside, then not necessarily in a sunny place, but in a shaded spot where they can be sheltered from the wind and what have you.
Yeah. Joan, you came with a rather pathetic
Yes, poor
little
thing.
plant there.
Sad, isn't it?
Now that's a cheese plant. Now what's the story behind that?
Well, my son bought this for his wife a Christmas present, and they happen to live in a very cold flat, which naturally when they come home from work, it's warm of an evening, sometimes too warm. But it's been overwatered so much, and I've tried to do things to it. I've dried it out, Jock, and repotted it.
Yeah.
I kept it on a pebble based, but as you can see,
Well,
it's not...
that is a monster or Swiss cheese plant with a lot of problems. If it's too cold, it's harmful to them. And if it's too cold and too hot as a combination of circumstances, that is harmful to them. And I think it's also harmful to put a sick plant or an ailing plant into a new or larger pot. So all these things are against it. You've got a problem right from the start. But I would think the thing to do with that now is to keep it warm and not to water it very much at all. Keep it very much on the dry side until it produces new leaves. And it might be an idea that the very bad leaves at the top there would be better removed, because I never think that a dead leaf does anything for a plant.
No. That was the original pot it came in, by the way.
Oh, you took it out of the pot and put
yes,
some new
I
soil
dried
around
it and repotted it.
Oh, well, you see, again, I always try to put myself into the position of the plant. And I think that plants are like people, and if you have a sick friend, you don't go and ask him to come and play a game of football with you. And the same thing, if you're going to take it out of the pot and knock all the roots about, it's going to think, well, what the hell,
Well,
she
it was
doesn't
so
want me.
soaked, you see. It
Yeah.
was really soaked,
Yeah.
and I wanted
I think
to
one
dry
of
it
the
off
ways
a
of
bit.
drying them out, if you have one that's very wet, you can take it out of its pot and put the root ball on top of the empty pot and let the air get around it, and that will dry it out much more rapidly.
John,
Thank you,
I've got
John.
one here with an aerial root, because a lot of people wrote to us saying, what on earth do you do with that root?
Well,
What
the
do you
aerial
do?
root, this is these belong to the aroid family, and they produce these aerial roots, and these will eventually find their way into the ground, and they will draw up nourishment for the plant. But when you've got them in a pot, the thing to do is to tie them into the side of the pot, stem, and then when they are long enough, you make a hole in the soil and you push the end of the root into the soil, and it will get around in the compost and benefit the plant. So lots of people want to cut them off, but I don't think you should cut off too many, maybe one or two, but not too many.
While we're on the subject, Mrs. Askew of County Durham, she's had a plant, a cheese plant, for 4 years. It's 6 foot high. The leaves have suddenly, without any rhyme or reason, turned yellow. She said it can't be her central heating, because she's had that all the time. She's tried taking a cutting and wonder if that's the best idea, if that's going to
Yes.
be good for the main plant.
I think it is. If you've got a plant that's dying from the bottom, it's possibly something that's gone wrong with the roots. And before it dies off completely, we can take this chappie back for a minute. Before it dies off completely, if you cut it down to about, this is a leaf joint, about 3 of those from the top, let the end of it dry, and then put it in some peat and sand, and I think you'll find that it does root fairly readily.
But it's true, isn't it, that some plants do have a limited life, and whether you've got green fingers or not, there's nothing you can do.
Oh, I think some plants have a limited life, but given reasonable care, we have Dory here who's got the most fantastic plant you're going to see in a moment, and I think given reasonable care, plants have very good value, really.
Joan, do you clean the leaves of your cheese plant?
I have cleaned it, and I did spray it, but Jock said I shouldn't now until that gets
No,
established.
I think, John, it's rather detrimental to have too much chemicals and things around any sort of plant leaves, but certainly around soft and sickly ones, it could be fatal.
I didn't realise before that in the wild, the cheese plant actually bears fruit.
Oh, not only in the wild, in the borough of Hertfordshire we have fruits as well.
Is that right?
Yes, at the nursery we've quite frequently get them, but on older plants. Once you get a plant that's about 8 foot high and about 8 foot across, then they produce beautiful flowers, arum-like flowers with a spathy at the back and the spadix in the centre, and they will eventually produce fruit.
Because we
But
had a
we'll write them.
query about growing from pips from Phyllis Roche of Normanton. She's grown figs, grapefruits, oranges, lemons. She says they're super plants, but she wonders whether they'll ever bear fruit.
Yeah, she's growing the plants, but not necessarily producing fruit. Many of them will, in fact, but it takes a very long time. Lemons, for example, wants about 10 years to produce a fruit. And by then you've got a plant that's so damn big, you've got no room for anything else in the house. almost.
Talking about big plants, Jock. Dory, you have brought in an absolute monster there.
Yes.
Now, that's a busy Lizzie.
Yes.
Tell me, how long did it take you to grow?
Well, it was given to me by my sister-in-law. I should imagine it was a little piece like that. It may not be quite as big as that. 18 months ago. And from then on, it's just grown and grown and grown.
And you've measured it, I know.
Yes,
What's the
and it's
size?
36 inches across, because in my home, I have it on a long table, and it sort of lies across, and I think it's charming because I like movement. I don't like plants that just, right up. I think movement is so nice on a plant.
Now, you had a lot of flowers on that
Yes,
last year.
I had 64 beautiful pink flowers, and they grow in like little clusters.
Yes,
don't they, in
I've got
trees.
a little one here to show. I think it's a remarkable plant too.
Is that
Dory.
a record, though, those flowers?
Oh no, I wouldn't say record, because they can grow into quite vast plants, the busy lizzies. And even on a small plant, if you pinch the growing tips out and allow it to bush out more, you'll find you'll get lots and lots of flowers. And there's new busy lizzies coming on the market.
Oh, I
See, that is
pretty, isn't
that's
it?
one of the New Guinea hybrids.
With
And
the
you can see the wonderful
variegated
colour
leaf.
and the variegated foliage, and these are going to be really spectacular
Yes,
things to grow.
beautiful.
Well, talking of monsters, we had a letter from Helen Medley of Llandudno, and I think she must beat your plant, in fact, Dorrie. Her plant is 5'10" inches high.
That's really
That
going.
includes the pot, of course.
Yes, that's
But
really
she actually,
going.
will it ever stop growing, Jock? I mean, is it just going to, she's going to have another
Well,
house
she'll have a
or something?
problem, probably have to cut a hole in the ceiling or something. And, but I think Dorrie's could have been the same, actually. And you can see all these very strong shoots. If they'd been directed in an upward direction and some of the lower shoots have been cut away, that would have run up to 5 or 6 foot as well.
What's
But it depends what you want, you see. Dorrie wants a nice spready one, and the other lady wants an upright one.
But Jock, I feed this once a month.
Yeah, I would have thought you would need to feed that more than once a month.
No.
And
Really.
this Helen Medley from Llandudno, whose picture we've just seen,
Yes.
she actually feeds hers liquid vitamins. She melts down vitamins.
Oh no, I do.
I've heard of this too.
Have you? Is that a good idea, Jock?
Well, it seems to work for some plants, but I don't necessarily think it works for
No, I feed mine once a month with the plant
with
food.
the liquid food, yeah.
Yes, yes.
But I would have thought you could feed that more than once a month. If you get a very big lush plant that's growing
Yes,
well,
it needs
you can
it,
feed
doesn't
it
it?
more frequently.
What is the
Maybe not-
best climate, in fact, for a busy Lizzie? Because I
The
have no
best
luck at
climate-
all.
Well, I have electricity at home. I mean, electric fires. And it seems to do quite well, whereas my daughter-in-law has gas, and hers no good at all.
There is a thing, there is a knack. You either got it, Jock, or you haven't.
I honestly believe that some people have got away with plants. I know a lot of people laugh and think it's idiotic to talk of green fingers. But I know people at the nursery who, we wouldn't call it, say they have green fingers, but they are what we would term good growers. They have a way with plants, a feeling for them that comes out, really.
Joan, you talk to your plants,
Oh,
don't
yes,
you?
I
Oh,
do.
so do I.
I do. And
I
even
know.
if I cut a stem, it may sound stupid, but I have to put my thumb underneath because to me it's breeding. I automatically do that. It may sound silly, but I just do
Yeah, I
that.
thought, well, plants are very sensitive things. I know a lady who talks to her plants and things that they understand. So when she telephones you about problems, she comes into the bedroom, so don't go here.
Lillian, Joan and Dorrie, thank you very much for bringing
Thank
your
you,
plants
thank you.
and indeed your queries. Now, indoor plants are just one way of making your home bright and cheerful, especially if you haven't got a garden. Another way, of course, is window boxes. The beautiful thing about window boxes is if you're looking from the inside out or from the outside in, you get the best of both worlds because they look equally good from either side.